Is it possible that the largest concert in the world, with lights, cheers, and tens of thousands of pairs of eyes, holds something invisible, inaudible, and only realized when everything is almost over? And if so, why did Jungkook and Jimin only realize it when the backstage clock was already showing the last minutes of the concert? The question began to circulate slowly, almost like a whisper that was reluctant to be mentioned out loud, a few hours after BTS's concert at a grand international stadium ended. At first, it was just a brief comment among the stage crew, then it became a restrained conversation in the dressing room, before finally turning into an inexplicable restlessness by ordinary logic. Something happened that night, something that wasn't recorded in the rundown, wasn't caught on the main camera, and wasn't planned by anyone. The concert, to the naked eye, went almost perfectly. Precise lighting, uninterrupted sound, song transitions flow like an exercise that has been repeated hundreds of times. Jungkook performs with full energy, his vocals are stable, his expression is lively. Jimin, as usual, danced with emotions that seemed to bind the audience in one long breath. The stadium rumbled, the lightsticks moved in unison, and from a distance it all looked like another victorious night in BTS history. But it is precisely behind that perfection that some people begin to feel a sense of strangeness, something too subtle to be called a mistake, but too real to ignore. A lighting crew member who later asked to remain anonymous recalled one strange moment when the seventh song was being performed. He swore to see the spotlights on the left side of the stage dimmed for a split second, not because of a technical malfunction, but rather like being swallowed up by a shadow that shouldn't be there. As he checked the control panel, all indicators were normal. No power surges, no system errors. But the feeling of discomfort did not disappear. It settled like a small thorn behind consciousness. On stage, Jungkook had stopped singing for a split second. Not a vocal mistake. The microphone stays in the correct position, the music goes on, but his eyes move towards the center audience as if catching something that the camera does not see. Official footage shows the pause as just an ordinary emotional expression. But for Jungkook himself, according to people close to him, the moment felt strange, like there was another voice in the middle of the cheering. Jimin, on the other side of the stage, felt differently. It does not see anything but feels a sudden change in mood. In an internal interview after the concert, he said there was a point when the air felt heavier, as if the stage was not only filled with music, but also by other presences that he could not explain. He thought it was just fatigue or the effect of adrenaline. That night, no one wants to spoil the euphoria with feelings that are not necessarily reasonable. The committee did not note any significant irregularities. All technical reports are clean. No security intrusion. No spectators fainted in the usually prone central area. Everything went according to plan. And precisely because of this, no one immediately realized that the concert harbored a small crack, a subtle crack that can only be seen if one pauses for a moment and asks, why do some things feel out of sync despite looking perfect? The first, clearer hints appeared towards the end of the concert, when the closing songs began to be played. On the big screen, the visuals that were supposed to follow Jimin's choreography seemed half a second late. The video operator thought it was just a system delay. But the delay happens over and over again, always at the same moment, when the camera points to the most crowded area of the audience. That's where Jungkook again felt something. Not a sound, not a shadow, but a chill that suddenly crept in amid the heat of the stage lights. He turned his head to Jimin, and for a split second the two exchanged glances. No dialogue, no clear cues, and yet people who know them well know there is a tacit communication there, a wordless recognition that something is not right. But the concert cannot be stopped just because of a hunch. The music goes on. The cheers are getting louder. The audience is unaware of anything, or may instead be aware of something but choose to dissolve in euphoria. Among the thousands of smiling and singing faces, some later admitted to having goosebumps for no reason, crying without knowing why, or feeling like they were being watched from the direction of the stage, even though the camera was not pointing at them. Is it just mass suggestion? Or was something else present that night, merging with the energy of tens of thousands of people? When the concert finally reached the final song, the organizers began to prepare for the closing. Fireworks are scheduled, visual effects are prepared, and the countdown goes according to plan. But in the control room, a security staffer reported a strange thing. Motion sensors in one of the backstage aisles were active many times, although the area was supposed to be empty and had been sterilized since noon. The report was almost ignored. Sensors are often problematic, but this time, the CCTV footage showed something that left the operator speechless. There is no apparent figure, no human shadow, but there is a shift of light that does not follow any source. It's as if something is passing formlessly, real enough to trigger the sensor, yet too faint for the camera to capture clearly. The footage was not immediately shown to Jungkook or Jimin. The organizers chose to finish the concert first. No one wants to create panic at the last minute, but anxiety began to spread, slowly and unspeakably, like a fog creeping behind the walls of the stadium. As the final song ended and the cheers peaked, Jungkook lowered his head longer than usual. Not because they were tired, but because there was a strange feeling pressing on their chest, the feeling that something had happened around them, something that would only be understood after all the lights went out. Jimin, standing a few steps away from her, felt the same. Both smiled at the audience, waved their hands, performed their roles to the end. But behind that smile, there are unanswered questions. Why does some crew feel like they've been watched since the seventh song? Why does the sensor move in an active sterile area without explanation? And why do Jungkook and Jimin, two of the people most used to reading the energy of the stage, feel a presence they cannot name? The answers to the questions had not yet appeared that evening, but one thing became clear when the concert was completely over and the stadium began to empty. The strange feeling did not go away with the audience. It instead settles, strengthens, and waits to be fully realized. And it wasn't until the concert was almost over, when the screens were turned off, the stadium lights dimmed, and the cheers turned into empty echoes, that Jungkook, Jimin, and the organizers began to realize that what they were experiencing was not just fatigue, not just suggestion, and perhaps not something that should be present at a concert. If something really happened in the middle of that concert, why didn't any of the main cameras capture it clearly? And if it's not recorded, why do so many people, crew, musicians, even part of the audience, feel the same way at about the same time? The question began to haunt the organizers a few minutes after the concert was actually over. As the last spectators left the stadium and the sound of footsteps echoed through the concrete halls, the atmosphere that had once been full of euphoria turned into an uncomfortable silence. The stage lights were turned off one by one, leaving a cold, flat emergency light. It was at this moment, something that had previously been restrained finally began to surface. In the main control room, audio operators are performing a routine procedure, checking raw sound recordings for internal archives. There is nothing unusual in the early minutes. Audience cheers, steady vocals, vague crew instructions. It all sounds like a typical BTS concert. But when the recording was played back right in the middle of the concert, around the 7th to 9th track, a technician stopped playback abruptly. In between the cheers, there was another voice. Not the crowd screaming, not crew instructions, not the sound of the stage. The sound is low, almost like a murmur, but consistent enough to appear on several different audio channels. Surprisingly, the sound was not heard live during the concert and did not enter the stadium's speaker system. It only appears on raw recordings, where all sounds are recorded as they are before being filtered. A technician described it later as a tone that has no direction, like the sound of someone speaking without actually saying a word. When the frequency is analyzed, there is no obvious microphone source. The sound could not be traced to Jungkook's, Jimin's, the audience's, or the ambient mics scattered around the stadium. More disturbingly, The sound appeared most clearly whenever the main camera pointed to the central audience area, a location that had previously also triggered visual delays on the big screen. At about the same time, the internal security team ended up playing back CCTV footage from the backstage hallway, footage that had previously left the operator speechless. When played back with enhanced exposure, it is noticeable that the light shift that triggers the sensor is not simply camera noise. There's a pattern. The movements are not random, but rather follow the same path over and over again, as if something were walking back and forth without being. The passage, according to the organizers' notes, used to be part of the old structure of the stadium, which was rarely used and was not open to the public for many years. Some of the senior crew even admitted to disliking the area, although they never knew the exact reason. But up to this point, all the findings were still considered technical gaffes. No one dares to immediately call it mystical until Jungkook is called to the control room. He came still dressed in concert clothes. His hair had not dried completely, his face showing fatigue mixed with confusion. At first, he was only asked to confirm whether he heard certain sounds during the concert. Jungkook was silent for a long time before answering. He said something that made the room quiet. He said he heard his name being called very quietly just before he stopped singing for a split second in the middle of the song. Not Jimin's voice, not the crew, no sound from the in-ear monitor. The voice came from the direction of the audience, but it was not like an ordinary scream. Closer, more personal. He thought it was just an illusion due to fatigue and adrenaline. But when the audio recording was played back and the murmur was heard, Jungkook's expression changed. He didn't panic, not overly surprised either. He only said quietly that the sound on the tape was similar to what he heard on stage. Jimin, who was called to follow, did not hear a similar sound, but he confirmed something else that equally bothered him. He admitted to losing focus suddenly on one part of the choreography, not because of a misstep, but because he felt like he was dancing in front of something that was observing, not just the audience. The feeling was so strong that he held his breath, afraid that if he turned his head, he would see something that wasn't supposed to be there. The confession was never officially recorded, not in the report, not distributed to outsiders. The committee agreed to keep all the findings as an internal archive, citing maintaining stability and avoiding public speculation. But the decision actually adds a layer of anxiety. Because the longer a recording is studied, the more little things feel out of sync. In one of the audience camera angles, a spectator stands still while everyone else jumps up and sings. The face is indistinct, covered with shadows. A few seconds later, the camera moved. When the same angle was shown again a few minutes later, the audience was gone, even though the area was very crowded and it was almost impossible for someone to get out without being seen. Some spectators interviewed informally after the concert also reported strange experiences. Some feel like they are being pushed from behind when there is no one. Some cry suddenly without knowing why. Some went home feeling inexplicably empty, even though the concert was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of their lives. Is all this just a psychological effect of a large-scale concert? Or is there something that harnesses the energy of thousands of people gathered in one space, at one time? What is clear, when the evening was getting late and the stadium was completely empty, the organizers took a rare decision: to close part of the backstage area ahead of schedule, including the old passage that triggered motion sensors. There was no official announcement. No technical reasons were presented, just a short instruction so that the area does not pass anyone. Jungkook and Jimin left the stadium with feelings they didn't bring with them when they arrived. Euphoria has evaporated, replaced by anxiety that is difficult to describe in words. They didn't talk about it publicly that night, but both knew, secretly, that what was happening at the concert was not over. Because there is one question that has not been answered, and it has only gotten stronger since the tape was played back. if the sound does not enter the microphone, if the figure is not caught on camera, and if that feeling is felt by so many people? Who or what was at the concert?